Evelyn had always been drawn to the shadows. It was where she felt most alive, hidden away from a world that never quite understood her. She lived a life of quiet solitude in a small, dimly lit apartment on the edge of the city, where every night seemed to blend into the next, and time moved in eerie silence. That was until she met him. It was on a stormy evening, the rain battering the windows as she sat alone at a bar, nursing her third glass of wine. Her eyes, tired and weary, met the gaze of a man who seemed as though he belonged to the darkness itself. His name was Elias, and there was something about him, something dangerous. His dark, penetrating eyes locked onto hers as if he could see right through her. "You're alone," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine. "So are you," she replied, not sure if she was challenging him or simply acknowledging the undeniable pull he had on her. He smiled, a slow, almost predatory grin. "I don't mind the company." And that was the moment everything changed. Elias was a man of few words, but his presence was enough to fill the empty spaces in Evelyn's life. They spent hours talking, the air around them thick with unspoken tension. He wasn't like anyone she had ever met. He was an enigma, wrapped in layers of mystery and darkness that beckoned her closer, even though every instinct screamed for her to stay away. Over the next few weeks, Elias became a constant in her life, but not in the way she expected. He wasn't just a man, he was an addiction. His touch left her craving more, his voice echoing in her mind long after he was gone. He had a way of pulling her into his world, a world of secrets and shadows, of passion that was as intense as it was dangerous. Evelyn knew there was something off about Elias. He was elusive, his life a series of half-truths and unanswered questions. But with every moment she spent with him, the lines between right and wrong blurred until the only thing that mattered was him and the dark, twisted connection they shared. One night, as they stood on the edge of the rooftop overlooking the city below, Evelyn asked the question she had been avoiding. "What are you hiding from me, Elias?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his fingers grazing the side of her face, his touch like fire against her skin. "The question is," he whispered, "what are you willing to lose for me?" Evelyn felt the weight of his words settle over her, heavy and suffocating. She had always been afraid of losing herself in someone else, but with Elias, it felt different. He wasn't asking for her to change. He was asking her to embrace the darkness that had always been there, lurking in the corners of her soul. "I'm willing to lose everything," she whispered back. The smile that spread across Elias's face was both tender and terrifying. Without another word, he leaned in and kissed her, slowly, deeply, as if marking her as his own. The kiss was not just an act of love. It was a promise, one that would bind her to him forever. As their passion consumed them, Evelyn realized that she had stepped into a world she couldn't escape. Elias was a man who thrived in the darkness, and now so was she. There was no turning back, no salvation, only the intoxicating allure of the shadows and the dangerous love that bound them together. And as the storm raged on outside, Evelyn surrendered herself to him, knowing that in his arms she had found both her salvation and her doom. After that night, their bond grew deeper, more intense, and dangerously all-consuming. Evelyn found herself caught in a web of passion and mystery, unable to pull away from Elias, even though she knew he was a force that could destroy her. Days blended into nights as they spent hours together, but the more time she spent with him, the more she noticed the shadows that clung to him like a second skin. Elias was always careful, always watching, as though waiting for something or someone to come for them. His world was full of secrets, and though Evelyn felt the intoxicating pull of his presence, she couldn't help but wonder what it would cost her in the end. Elias, in his cold, enigmatic way, slowly began to reveal pieces of his past. He wasn't just a man shrouded in darkness. He had a history filled with pain, betrayal, and a past he was desperately trying to outrun. He spoke of lost love, of a woman who had once been everything to him, only to be torn from him in the most violent way possible. It was this tragedy that shaped him into the man he had become, cold, distant, yet bound by an undeniable hunger for something darker, something deeper. Despite the walls he had built around himself, Evelyn began to see the cracks, the vulnerability that lurked beneath his tough exterior. She understood the depth of his pain, even if it frightened her. She knew that loving him would only lead her further into the shadows, but her desire, her need for him, drowned out the voices of reason. She couldn't stay away. One night, Elias took her to a remote, forgotten mansion on the outskirts of the city. It was his sanctuary, a place where no one could find them, a place where their love could burn freely without the interference of the world. But as they explored the mansion's dimly lit halls, Evelyn felt a creeping sense of unease. The place was beautiful in its decay, but it was also suffocating, as if it carried the weight of all the dark secrets Elias had buried there. As they reached the master bedroom, Elias turned to her with an intensity she hadn't seen before. His touch was desperate, almost frantic, and in his eyes she saw a depth of longing that terrified her. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice rough, like he was struggling to hold on to himself. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, but the pull of his gaze was too powerful. "Yes," she whispered. Without another word, Elias kissed her fiercely, his hands shaking as he pulled her closer. She surrendered to him, to the fire that consumed them both. But as they made love, she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in her gut that something was terribly wrong. When it was over, and they lay tangled in the sheets, Elias finally spoke, his voice heavy with unspoken words. "There's something I need to tell you, something you won't be able to walk away from." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. She already knew that whatever he was about to reveal would change everything. "I'm not who you think I am, Evelyn. I've been running from my past, but I can't run anymore. The people I've hurt, the lives I've destroyed, it's all catching up with me," he confessed, his eyes dark and full of regret. Evelyn's mind raced, but before she could say anything, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. The sound of breaking glass shattered the stillness of the night. Elias froze, his expression turning hard, like a man preparing for war. "They found us," he said, his voice cold and controlled. Evelyn's pulse quickened as the weight of his words sank in. She had walked into a world of shadows and darkness, and now there was no escape. The love they shared had come at a price, and the consequences were about to unfold. As the door to the bedroom slammed open, Evelyn knew their lives would never be the same again. The game had changed, and now they were both trapped in the same dark, twisted love, one that could either save them or destroy them forever.